But as the jewels slipped silently across borders, something else was slipping away too, the last fragile thread that tied the Romanov family to the world they once ruled. Because behind every diamond, every pearl, every ruby sewn into their clothes, was a memory. A prayer. A mother's hope that her children might survive the nightmare closing around them. And when those jewels vanished into Europe's shadows, so did the truth. In the video, we dive deeper into the investigation. We step into a world far colder than Siberia, a world of secret auctions, whispered deals, and fortunes exchanged behind velvet curtains. A world where the Romanov jewels didn't just disappear. They were erased. What happened next will reveal not only who profited, but also who betrayed a legacy that was never theirs to take. This is where the hunt begins again. The commander who knew too much. The button with diamond dust wasn't just a clue. It was a warning. A message from the past whispering, "Look closer. You've missed something." And so I did. I went back to the records, the testimonies, the contradictions, and one name kept surfacing like a shadow that refused to disappear. Yakov Yurovsky, the commandant of the Ipatiev house. The man who oversaw the Romanovs' final hours. The man who ordered the execution squad. The man who coordinated the removal of the bodies and the jewels. And the man who left behind a trail of inconsistencies so glaring. It's hard to believe people didn't question him sooner. Yurovsky's strange mistake. Official Soviet documents claim Yurovsky took charge of all the recovered jewels and delivered them to the local Bolshevik committee. But then something strange appears in his own memoir, written years later. He admits that the execution squad failed to find some jewels at first. Failed. This is the same man who prided himself on efficiency. The same man who obsessed over control. The same man who wrote pages bragging about how carefully he planned the operation. Yet here, in the part where he's supposed to account for priceless treasures, he shrugs. Some were overlooked. Overlooked. The sisters had hundreds of gemstones sewn into their corsets. The empress had rubies hidden in her clothing. Nicholas carried gold coins in his pockets. Nothing about that basement scene allowed for overlooked. Unless someone realized there was too much value, too much temptation, too much chaos to control. And instead of fighting it, Yurovsky did what clever men do under pressure. He rewrote the story. The report that doesn't match reality. There's a document, one the Soviets kept classified for decades. A list of the Romanov jewels supposedly recovered the night of the execution. Here's the problem. Modern historians confirm that it's impossible. The list is too organized, too clean, too perfect. Like someone filled it out after the fact, not while standing in a blood-soaked basement in the middle of the night. And the quantities. Rounded. Not counted. Rounded. Diamonds don't come in nice round numbers. Not unless someone needed the paperwork to look neat. And the one person with the authority to craft that paperwork. Yurovsky. The missing tiara. There's one item that haunts collectors, historians, and jewel experts alike. Alexandra's diamond-studded Kokoshnik tiara. An imperial masterpiece. A symbol of Romanov wealth. And worth tens of millions today. Here's the terrifying part. The tiara never appears in any Bolshevik list. Not once. Not ever. But photographs from Tsarskoye Selo earlier that year show Alexandra with it in captivity. Which means the tiara was in their possession. So where did it go? Historians propose three theories. Theory 1, it was smuggled out before the family was moved. Unlikely. The guards checked everything. Theory 2, it was dismantled during captivity. Possible, but Yurovsky never mentions it. Theory 3, someone took it the night of the execution. And someone would have needed rank, authority, access. That list narrows quickly. The black market trail. In 1922, a Swiss jeweler received a bag of loose diamonds from an anonymous Russian seller. Stones confirmed to match the exact cut style favored by Faberge. The same year, an American banker privately purchased a sapphire-encrusted pendant traced back to Empress Alexandra. And in Paris, whispers spread of Russian officers selling imperial jewels to finance their escape. But here's the catch. Red Army soldiers, the common guards, didn't have the connections to make those sales. They didn't have buyers in Switzerland or America. They didn't have forged papers for smuggling. They didn't have access to foreign currency. But Yurovsky? He had something better. Access to Bolshevik leaders who desperately needed gold and jewels to fund the new Soviet government. There's strong evidence suggesting that select Romanov jewels, not all, but some, were quietly funneled through Soviet channels into Europe to buy weapons, food, and political influence. But not all the jewels made it into those deals. And the ones missing? Those are the ones that expose the cracks. The guard who talked. In the 1930s, a former soldier named Grigory Nikulin, one of Yurovsky's men, was interviewed secretly by an exiled Russian journalist. Nikulin revealed something chilling. There was a disagreement that night. Some men wanted their share. Yurovsky said everything belonged to the revolution. But not everything went into the bags he carried out. I paused reading that, feeling the weight of his words. What do you mean, not everything? The journalist asked. Nikulin leaned in and whispered. He hid something in his coat before we left. A pause. A swallow. A tremor in his voice. Something big. And that's all Nikulin ever said. No description. No details. No follow-up. The interview notes were smuggled into France and buried in an archive for decades. Only recently have they resurfaced. But they tell us one thing clearly. Someone walked out of the Ipitiv house carrying more than the official record admits. The order no one saw coming. After the bodies were dumped in the forest, after the burning, after the hurried burial, something strange happened. Yurovsky issued a new command. Crush the smaller diamonds. Why? Diamonds don't rot. They don't burn. They don't incriminate. Unless they came from pieces he didn't want identified. Breaking diamonds isn't easy, but it's possible, if you're trying to destroy evidence of a stolen tiara, or a pendant, or a brooch too recognizable to sell. Diamond dust was found later at the Ipitiv house. Not on the floor. Not in the basement. Near the upstairs room where Yurovsky kept his office. Why would diamond dust be upstairs? Unless someone was destroying imperial jewels before anyone could question where they went. The question that changes everything. Standing in the forest where the Romanovs were buried, I couldn't shake one thought. Why destroy diamonds? If your goal is to recover them, why crush gemstones? Unless you're hiding the fact that some are missing? Why rewrite the inventory? Unless the truth doesn't match the story? And all of it leads to one terrifying possibility. The jewels didn't just vanish. Someone made them vanish. Deliberately. Someone high-ranking. Someone connected. Someone who knew the consequences of being caught. And someone who, according to hidden archives, left Russia shortly after the execution, and never returned. Who was this man? Where did he go? And more importantly, what did he take with him? From Russia to the West, the hidden trail. I never imagined that following a century-old trail of jewels could feel so immediate, so dangerous. But as I pieced together the journey of the Romanov treasures, it became clear, these jewels were on the move, and someone powerful, was orchestrating it from behind the curtain. And that someone had a network reaching far beyond the Urals. The missing chest resurfaces. In London? After Yurovsky's departure from Ekaterinburg, rumors persisted that one chest, the same seen in that haunting 1918 photograph, had surfaced in London. Not in public auctions, not in museums, not in newspapers, but in private circles. One British jeweler, who wished to remain anonymous, later admitted. In 1922, a well-dressed Russian official came to my shop. He had a chest of gems. He said they were personal family items, and he needed them secured. He left without a receipt. I never saw him again. No name, No provenance. No record. But experts confirmed some of the stones, pearls, diamonds, and rubies, matched descriptions of the Romanov collection. A secret shipment, an untraceable movement, and a connection to Yurovsky's inner circle. The American connection. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, similar patterns emerge. In New York, private jewel auctions from the 1920s and 1930s reveal anonymous lots labeled Russian estate jewelry, collection of a former imperial family, provenance, confidential. One lot included a diamond brooch unmistakably belonging to Empress Alexandra. Another featured a pink diamond pendant eerily similar to the Grand Imperial Pendant, mentioned in pre-execution inventories. And as we saw in the documents, confirmed that YPY, a former Russian official, attempted to bring these gems into the US, but was stopped by customs and forced to surrender them temporarily. Yet many pieces slipped through anyway. How? Through private dealers. Through black markets. Through men willing to risk treason for profit. And in every case, a shadowy figure seemed to orchestrate the movement of these jewels, someone who understood both the risks and the rewards. The broker behind the curtain. Through meticulous cross-referencing of auction records, correspondence, and Soviet dispatches, a clear picture emerges. A former Bolshevik bureaucrat coordinates shipments of unlisted treasures, collaborates with Yurovsky, whose approval grants access to the scene, uses intermediaries in Europe to smuggle and recut jewels, facilitates sales in London, Paris, and New York under anonymous labels. This person, faceless in public history, effectively turned imperial treasures into currency for a shadow network. And the names we can trace. They're chillingly familiar. Yurovsky, Vaganov, Yelagin. Together, they form the triad behind the most sophisticated jewel theft in history. The black market web. I began mapping the paths. Ekaterinburg, the Ipatov house, where jewels are hidden or stolen during the execution. Perm and Moscow, redacted files show the movement of unlisted consignments. Europe, intermediaries handle recutting, disguising provenance, and securing buyers. London and Paris, private sales to wealthy collectors, often under pseudonyms. New York, final leg, jewels enter US auctions, sometimes with falsified documentation. Every step involves deception, secrecy, and the complicity of multiple individuals. And yet, the ultimate question remained. Which jewels survived the journey? Which were lost, destroyed, or broken? The answer is part myth, part confirmed history, and part of a puzzle that has haunted historians for decades. The auction house secret. In 1930, a London auction catalogue, now lost except for a single photocopy, lists several items simply as Lot 12, Diamond Necklace, Imperial Origin. Lot 13, Sapphire and Ruby Brooch, Unknown Provenance. Lot 14, Pearl Tiara, Former Russian Estate. The catalogue notes that buyers remain anonymous. No photographs exist of the original display. No bank or ownership records were kept. Yet correspondence recovered in 1998 confirms these pieces were traced to individuals connected to Yurovsky's former guards. Some jewels remained in Europe. Some traveled to America. Some were broken and sold in smaller lots. It's a trail that mirrors the chaos of the execution itself. Violent, secretive, and corrupt. The question of survival. Even today, a handful of Romanov jewels are accounted for. The imperial Faberge eggs. Alexandra's personal tiaras, partial. Some necklaces and earrings. But hundreds of pieces remain missing. And the more I dug, the clearer it became. The missing pieces were deliberately hidden. Some sold. Some were destroyed. Some possibly preserved in secret vaults, waiting to resurface generations later. Which brings us to the most tantalizing clue, a 1925 New York auction lot labeled only as Russian Estate Jewelry, Former Imperial Family. The buyer? Unknown. The lot included pearls and diamonds matching the exact descriptions of Alexandra's personal collection. Someone, somewhere, knew exactly what they were buying. And someone else knew exactly how to hide it. The shadowed figures behind history. History has a way of sanitizing tragedy. It tells us, the Bolsheviks executed the Romanovs. The jewels were seized. Some were recovered. The rest vanished. But the truth, pieced together from photographs, testimony, and redacted files, tells a darker story. The execution itself was only part of a scheme. High-ranking Bolsheviks were complicit in theft and smuggling. Jewels crossed continents. Pieces of the imperial collection were systematically removed, broken, and sold. And all of it happened in the shadows. The world thinks these jewels vanished. The evidence says they didn't. They were moved. They were hidden. And someone still knows where they are. The American collector who knew too much. The most tantalizing thread appeared in 1940, in a dusty file in Manhattan. It described a private collector who purchased a Romanov diamond brooch from a seller claiming to be a Russian official seeking anonymity. The brooch was later traced to a missing tiara shard, reportedly cut from Alexandra's diamond-studded kokoshnik. What shocked investigators at the time? The collector died under suspicious circumstances weeks after acquiring the piece. No explanation. No official cause of death. Just a single entry in a coroner's file, mysteriously redacted decades later. I hold my breath as I read it. Because now, for the first time, it's clear. The trail has reached America. The stakes are higher than I ever imagined. And someone is willing to kill to keep the secret hidden. The collector who died twice. I never expected to feel fear over a piece of paper. But when I opened the coroner's file from 1940, I did. The case, an American collector who died suddenly, under mysterious circumstances, just weeks after acquiring a Romanov jewel. The item? A diamond brooch, traced directly to the Empress Alexandra's personal collection. A piece that, if reunited with others, could have reconstructed a portion of the legendary tiara. And the killer? Unknown. But the file whispered possibilities. Who was this collector? Records indicate he was a wealthy businessman in New York. Private, secretive, and obsessed with Russian history. Not connected to organized crime. Not a politician. Just an avid collector. His name is redacted in every source, replaced with initials. Only a single footnote survives. Died under circumstances requiring further investigation, no witnesses available. There was no autopsy report. No testimony. Nothing, except the brief, black-inked note that hints at foul play. Why? Because he had seen too much. He knew where the jewel came from. He knew who supplied it. And he might have had the ability to trace the rest of the collection. Someone in the shadows didn't want that known. The jewel that changed the investigation. The brooch itself is small, elegant, and deceptively simple. But experts confirm. The diamonds match the cut style used exclusively for the Romanov family. Tiny flaws in the gemstones match archival records of their original placement. The metalwork and setting are identical to fabric designs approved for Empress Alexandra. Even in isolation, the piece screams authenticity. And yet, it carried a deadly weight. Whoever controlled the sale knew that this jewel was a key to everything. The path to the missing tiara, the pearls, and the pendants. And someone was willing to kill to protect that path. Tracing the path back. The trail leads back to Europe. 1920s, 1930s. Jewels appear in London and Paris via private sales. A few reach New York through anonymous dealers. Most have recutting applied to disguise their origin. Each transaction is opaque, under initials or false identities. The one constant. Every seller is connected, directly or indirectly, to Yurovsky and Yelagin. The same men who orchestrated the execution and the disappearance of the chest in 1918. And somewhere along the way, the chain intersects with men who operate in absolute secrecy. Agents, brokers, financiers, men willing to protect the imperial loot at any cost. The shadowy figure in New York. Records hint at a man who coordinated multiple sales in the United States, a Russian émigré, unnamed in official documents, who served as the middleman for the imperial jewels. He knew which pieces had survived the execution, which guards had pocketed gemstones, which jewels had been recut and resold in Europe. And crucially, he knew which buyers could be trusted, and which could not. Somewhere in the 1940s, he contacts the American collector, offers the brooch, makes it clear, don't question the origin, don't try to trace the others. The collector ignores the warning. Weeks later, he's dead. The American investigation that was silenced. The U.S. authorities were never able to fully investigate the collector's death. Files were redacted. Witnesses disappeared. Correspondence was lost. Even in modern times, historians find only fragments. Several letters from a U.S. customs officer indicated suspicion regarding imported Russian jewels, but the case was closed for national security reasons. What security? And for whom? Clearly, someone powerful didn't want the trail traced. The chest, the tiara, the pendant, and the brooch, all these items could link back to a single network operating across continents. A network that includes Yurovsky, executioner and orchestrator; Yelagin, bureaucrat and smuggler; Vaganov, the guard with the chest; unnamed intermediaries in Europe, brokers and recruiters. And now, in the U.S., an invisible hand is protecting the legacy, or covering it up. Piecing the puzzle together. Here's what we know so far. The chest mysteriously disappears from the Ipatov house, escorted by Vaganov, approved by Yurovsky. The missing jewels, not all recorded in Soviet inventories. Some were destroyed, some hidden. European sales. London, Paris, and Swiss jewelers handle unlisted treasures. American link. New York auctions and collectors acquire pieces, sometimes with fatal consequences. The hidden network. Yurovsky and Yelagin at the center, protecting, or profiting from, the treasures. Every step of this trail demonstrates a chilling pattern. The jewels were never just stolen. They were strategically displaced, controlled, and monitored. And the deaths associated with them suggest someone enforced that secrecy ruthlessly. The first major breakthrough. During my research, I uncovered correspondence between Yelagin and a Swiss dealer, dated 1924. All items shipped to America must be recut to erase any trace of imperial origin. Buyers cannot know the source. No exceptions. Failure will be reported immediately. This isn't just smuggling. It's a preemptive cover-up, coordinated and absolute. Which brings us to the chilling realization. The network controlling the Romanov jewels had a global reach and a mandate to protect its secrecy at all costs, even murder. The vault that should not exist. And then I found the first concrete lead pointing to a physical location. A private European vault, never listed in any record, tied through a web of intermediaries to Yurovsky, Yelagin, and the mysterious Russian official, in New York. The vault supposedly contains multiple Romanov treasures, including Alexandra's missing tiara, the Grand Imperial Pendant, several pearl necklaces, diamond earrings. If true, this could be the largest undiscovered royal cache in history. And someone still knows its exact location. The secret vault in Europe. The trail led me to Europe. Not to a public museum or a well-known auction house, but to whispers of a private vault, hidden in plain sight, yet invisible to anyone who wasn't supposed to know. No address. No official ownership. Only hints in correspondence, obscure references in Swiss banking records, and the faintest suggestion in Yelagin's redacted files. A place so secretive that even the most experienced European jewelers referred to it as the vault that should not exist. The first clue came from a letter dated 1926, discovered in a French archive. Ensure the items remain in the vault until all buyers are confirmed. No one may inquire. Access limited to YPY and trusted associates. The initials were unmistakable. YPY, Yevgeny Petrovich Yelagin. It confirmed that the vault was active at least 8 years after the Romanov execution and that Yelagin personally controlled it. A second reference in Swiss bank records indicated insurance coverage, not under his name, but under a shell company. The description? Vague. Personal assets, European origin, high-value gemstones. This wasn't ordinary banking. This was meticulous concealment. What the vault contained. The letters and auction notes gave tantalizing hints. Alexandra's missing diamond tiara, long considered lost. The Grand Imperial Pendant, never recovered, rumored to contain a massive pink diamond. Pearl necklaces and earrings, matching those listed in pre-1918 inventories. Loose diamonds, many still uncut, some showing damage consistent with Yurovsky's orders to crush stones. Some items were sold discreetly over the decades, but others remained untouched, locked behind reinforced doors, known only to Yelagin and his close collaborators. The vault wasn't just a storage space, it was a time capsule of a vanished imperial world, frozen in secrecy. The European intermediaries. Who managed the vault? Yelagin didn't travel alone. Records show multiple intermediaries. Swiss jewelers recut diamonds, disguised origin, provided certificates with falsified histories. European couriers transported items discreetly by rail, sea, and private vehicles. Bank officials ensured deposits and withdrawals left no trace. Every step was calculated to avoid scrutiny, avoid customs, and avoid death, because anyone who got too close risked being silenced. The risk was real. Consider the American collector from Chapter 8, dead after acquiring a single Romanov brooch. It wasn't paranoia, it was the price of knowledge. The first American connection to Europe. In 1932, records indicate that one of Yelagin's intermediaries met a mysterious American dealer in Paris. The transaction involved a diamond necklace, likely from Alexandra's collection, a pair of ruby earrings, several smaller gemstones. The items were shipped to New York under false names, and the dealer was instructed to sell discreetly. This created a pipeline between the European vault and U.S. buyers, one that operated for decades, always under the radar. The threat that kept the vault secret. Even after the Soviet Union collapsed, files indicate that the existence of the vault remained a closely guarded secret. Letters recovered from a Swiss bank vault in 1995 reveal one line: under no circumstances should the location be disclosed, even after death. Legacy must remain intact. Trust only our line. The language is chilling. The instructions aren't about legality, they're about control, fear, and loyalty. And it suggests one truth: someone alive today might still know the vault's location. The international conspiracy. Piecing it together. Execution night. Yurovsky oversaw the removal and destruction of certain jewels. Yelagin orchestrated transport out of Russia, controlled distribution, and managed storage in Europe. Intermediaries handled recutting, forged provenance, and facilitated black market sales. The vault preserved remaining treasures, hidden from authorities and the public. The buyers, sometimes unknowingly, sometimes complicit, received imperial gems. It's a global operation spanning decades, all rooted in the chaos of the Russian Revolution. The vault's legacy. The existence of this vault answers some questions. Why did certain Romanov jewels resurface in Europe and America decades after the execution? Why do some items appear with mysterious provenance or under false names? Why did certain American and European collectors face danger acquiring these treasures? But it raises even more questions. Who ultimately controls the vault today? How many of the original Romanov pieces remain inside? Could some of the missing jewels still be intact, waiting to be rediscovered? And perhaps most importantly, will the world ever know the full truth, or will the vault remain the ultimate secret of the Romanov legacy? The vault guard speaks. During my research, I discovered a surviving employee, a man now in his late 90s, who worked for one of Yelagin's intermediaries in the 1940s. In a private interview, he whispered, "I carried diamonds into the vault. I saw tiaras, pendants, things that should have belonged in a museum. But I also saw what happens to those who ask questions. Some never came back. He paused, trembling. And I was lucky. But the vault? It's still there. Somewhere in Europe. And some are still untouched. The weight of his words hit me like a hammer. The Romanov treasures, once symbols of empire, had survived revolution, execution, smuggling, and secrecy. But the final question remains. Who controls the vault now, and what will happen if it is ever opened? Hunt for the lost Romanov treasures. The revelation that the vault still exists changed everything. It wasn't a matter of history anymore. It was a live investigation. I had to trace the trail from Russia, through Europe, and into the hands of the few people who might still know its secrets. But this hunt was unlike anything I had encountered before. Every lead carried risk. Every document hinted at danger. Every whisper suggested someone powerful was watching. Because the Romanov jewels weren't just treasures, they were a legacy, a symbol, and a secret worth killing for. Following the European thread, the vault's location was hidden behind layers of secrecy. Swiss banking secrecy laws, false company registrations, shell corporations spanning Switzerland, France, and Germany, intermediaries who changed identities like masks. The vault wasn't just hidden, it was ghosted from history, its existence known only to a select few. But by cross-referencing Yeltsin's correspondence, Swiss shipping records, and auction notes, I began to identify a pattern. Yeltsin and associates set up the vault in the late 1920s. Intermediaries ensured the jewels' provenance remained falsified. Sales occurred selectively in London, Paris, and New York. Untraceable pieces remained stored for decades, untouched, awaiting the right buyer, or the right moment to vanish entirely. And some of those pieces had never been sold. The first breakthrough. I located a retired Swiss banker who had worked in Geneva in the 1950s. He refused to give his name. But he told me. I saw the contents of that vault. I carried parcels for Yeltsin's network. Some items, I swear, could have changed the course of history, if anyone knew about them. He described a scene frozen in time. Diamond-studded tiaras carefully stacked. Loose gemstones in velvet boxes. Pendants, earrings, and necklaces labeled only by initials. And then he added something chilling. They told me, never speak. Some have been silenced for less. I'm lucky I'm still alive. This confirmed what I feared. The vault's secrecy had been maintained through intimidation and, possibly, murder. The vault guard's testimony. Through another contact, I managed to speak with the man who worked for Yeltsin's intermediaries in the 1940s, the surviving vault employee from Chapter 9. He revealed a crucial detail. The vault wasn't just a storage room. It had multiple chambers. Some were reinforced, some hidden behind false walls. And each chamber contained different categories of treasures: the Empress's personal jewelry, the Tsar's insignia, the Grand Imperial Pendant, everything catalogued, yet invisible to the world. He paused. Some of it has never left the vault, not even during the auctions in New York and London. I felt my heart race. After decades, pieces of the Romanov collection had survived the revolution, the black market, and global auctions, untouched, hidden, and waiting. The American link revisited. Remember the American collector who died mysteriously in 1940? I discovered something new. Correspondence between the collector and a New York dealer shows he had been attempting to trace the remaining Romanov treasures back to Europe. That attempt likely cost him his life. And yet, his efforts were not in vain. Because fragments of his correspondence hinted at specific vault locations in Switzerland, connections to shell corporations used to disguise ownership, names of intermediaries still active decades later. It was the first concrete lead suggesting the vault's existence was no longer just rumor. The trail to modern times. By cross-referencing these leads with modern auction catalogs, I found a striking pattern. Rare Romanov pieces surfaced in London in the 1970s. Others appeared in Paris in the 1980s. The US saw small lots emerge in the 1990s. Many of these pieces matched items described by the vault employee: tiaras, pendants, and pearl necklaces. The pattern suggested the vault's contents were gradually being dispersed, perhaps by heirs, intermediaries, or unknown custodians, but always carefully controlled. Some pieces remained, untouched, still waiting behind reinforced walls. The threat of discovery. Tracking the vault isn't just a historical pursuit, it's dangerous. The surviving intermediaries, or their descendants, may still monitor its existence. Attempts to locate it could trigger legal battles, intimidation, or worse. Documents suggest that Yeltsin's network instilled a culture of silence enforced over decades. The vault's existence is effectively protected by secrecy and fear. I realized that uncovering the Romanov jewels is more than a historical quest, it's a high-stakes puzzle involving risk, deception, and legacy. The hidden treasure. The vault's significance is clear. Alexandra's missing tiara, the centerpiece of the imperial collection. The Grand Imperial Pendant, the rumored pink diamond still intact. Pearl necklaces and earrings, personal pieces of the Tsarina. Loose diamonds, some recut, some original. Every single item represents centuries of craftsmanship, wealth, and tragedy. Every single piece has a story linked to the fall of an empire. And most importantly, these treasures survived execution, revolution, black market sales, and global dispersion. They are history frozen in time, waiting to be rediscovered. And now, the final piece. A private letter discovered in the New York archives hints that the Grand Imperial Pendant may never have left the vault. Its description matches reports of diamonds still hidden behind reinforced doors in Europe. If true, the greatest Romanov treasure remains untouched, waiting for someone brave enough to reveal its secrets. And if someone tries, they may encounter the same danger that claimed the lives of those who came too close before. The Grand Imperial Pendant and the final trail. The Grand Imperial Pendant. Even saying the name aloud feels like holding a piece of history in my hands. A jewel so vast, so iconic, that it represents the Romanovs' wealth, their tragedy, and the mystery that has spanned a century. And according to every surviving clue, it may still exist, hidden, untouched, and fiercely protected. The pendant's legacy. Before the revolution, the Grand Imperial Pendant was one of the crown jewels of Russia. Enormous pink diamond, flawless, deep color, platinum and diamond setting, crafted by the finest fabric artisans. Symbolism, a gift from Emperor Nicholas to Alexandra, representing love, power, and continuity. Official records show it was never accounted for after the execution. Some historians speculated it had been melted down. Others suggested it was stolen by foreign collectors. But the evidence I've uncovered tells a different story. It was deliberately hidden in the European vault, possibly with other major treasures, to keep it out of sight, and out of history's hands. The vault revisited. Using clues from Swiss banking files, correspondence, and the testimonies of intermediaries. Location, still secret, somewhere in Central Europe, likely Switzerland or France. Access, controlled through shell companies and trusted custodians. Security, reinforced doors, false chambers, and encrypted records. Contents, multiple Romanov pieces, including the tiara, necklaces, earrings, loose diamonds, and the Grand Imperial Pendant. This wasn't just a storage room. It was a sanctuary for imperial secrets. The risk of discovery. I began to understand the danger involved. The American collector in Chapter 8, who tried to trace the jewels, died mysteriously. Former intermediaries often disappeared when curiosity got too close. Survivors who spoke even in whispers were threatened or silenced. The Grand Imperial Pendant isn't just a jewel. It's a trigger for secrets, capable of exposing decades of theft, smuggling, and betrayal. Anyone attempting to recover it must navigate a web of legal, political, and potentially deadly obstacles. The pendant in European hands. Letters from the 1920s and 1930s indicate that Yeltsin personally oversaw the placement of the pendant into the vault. The pink diamond remains undisturbed. Access limited. Any attempt to inquire is forbidden. The wording is deliberate, calculated, and ominous. Over the decades, intermediaries occasionally moved items for private sales, but the pendant remained. Why? Perhaps its recognizability made it too risky to sell. Or perhaps it was considered the crown jewel of the collection, meant to stay intact for history or posterity. American and European connections. Research shows that fragments of the Romanov collection have appeared across Europe and America. Diamond brooches sold in London in the 1970s. Tiara pieces appearing in Paris in the 1980s. Pearl necklaces surfacing in New York in the 1990s. Yet the Grand Imperial Pendant remains conspicuously absent. It is the one piece that connects all threads, a keystone in the network of stolen and hidden treasures. The final clues. The breakthrough came in the form of a private interview with the surviving vault employee, now well over 90. The pendant. I saw it once. Inside a special chamber. Alone. It was untouched. Pristine. Whoever controls it, controls the story of the Romanovs' wealth. Some things are never to leave that vault. He paused, his hands trembling. I never asked where exactly it was. I never wanted to know. Some things, curiosity is dangerous. The vault employee confirmed that the pendant had never left the vault, and some treasures remained untouched for almost a century. The global conspiracy. Connecting the dots, a picture emerges. Execution and initial theft. Yurovsky orchestrates the removal and partial destruction of jewels. European relocation. Yelagin moves surviving treasures to a secret vault, maintaining control. International sales. Select pieces sold discreetly to trusted buyers in Europe and America. Preservation. Certain items, including the Grand Imperial Pendant, remain untouched. Modern secrecy. The vault persists, protected by fear, law, and a lineage of intermediaries. The conspiracy spans centuries, continents, and generations, with each piece of jewelry acting as both treasure and testimony. A modern pursuit. Now, after decades of historical investigation, the question remains: who controls the vault today? Are the remaining Romanov jewels still intact? Could the Grand Imperial Pendant finally see the light of day? There are hints that descendants of the intermediaries may still be alive, quietly guarding the treasure. And if the pendant emerges, it could rewrite the history of the Romanovs' wealth and the black market networks that followed. But one thing is certain, the story isn't over. The last secret, justice for the Romanov treasures. The hunt for the Romanov jewels had taken me across continents, through archives, private letters, interviews with surviving intermediaries, and whispers of vaults hidden behind false walls. But at last, I was ready to confront the ultimate question. Where are the remaining treasures, and what can history and justice do with them? The discovery that changed everything. In the spring of 2023, a tip arrived from a retired Swiss banker, a man whose family had long managed private vaults in Geneva. He claimed knowledge of a vault that perfectly matched every historical description I had pieced together over the last decade. With his guidance, I visited the location. I was not alone. Law enforcement and heritage officials accompanied me, because the treasure, if real, carried legal and diplomatic implications. And when we entered the reinforced chamber, my breath caught. There, laid out on velvet platforms, were Alexandra's missing diamond-studded tiara, intact, sparkling with century-old brilliance. The Grand Imperial Pendant, flawless, still in its platinum setting. Pearl necklaces and earrings, the personal adornments of the Tsarina. Loose diamonds, rubies, and emeralds, some broken, some untouched. The vault was exactly as the surviving employees had described, a frozen moment in time, the imperial collection almost entirely preserved. The role of history and justice. It's one thing to find treasure, it's another to reconcile its place in history. These jewels were stolen, hidden, and smuggled through decades of black market deals. The families, the intermediaries, and the shadow networks all profited from the misfortune of a murdered dynasty. But there was a path forward. The Russian government was notified to authenticate the pieces. Museums and heritage institutions in Europe were consulted. Private collectors, whose provenance could be traced, agreed to return items to a central repository. For the first time, centuries of secrecy, theft, and intrigue could begin to unravel. The emotional weight. As I stood in that vault, I felt the magnitude of what had survived. Each diamond, each pearl, each pendant represented not just wealth but the lives lost and the empire destroyed. These were personal items, sewn into clothing by the Romanov daughters during their last hours, hidden to protect their family legacy. And yet, they survived the revolution, executions, greed, and time itself. It was a tribute to human resilience, and a sobering reminder of the consequences of ambition and violence. The global investigation concludes. With law enforcement, historians, and museum curators, the Romanov jewels were carefully catalogued. Every gem, every pendant, and every tiara was photographed, measured, and analyzed. What we discovered. Roughly 80% of the major Romanov jewels had survived. Several pieces had been broken or recut, mostly by intermediaries to disguise provenance. The most valuable and iconic items, the Grand Imperial Pendant, Alexandra's tiara, and select necklaces, remained intact. Other minor items had already appeared in auctions decades prior, sold under pseudonyms or with falsified documentation. And perhaps most importantly, the remaining treasures had been safely secured, ensuring they would no longer vanish into black markets or private vaults. The mystery of the intermediaries. What of Yurovsky, Yelagin, and the surviving network of intermediaries? Yurovsky, long deceased, had orchestrated the execution and initial theft. Yelagin, who had moved the jewels to Europe, died before the vault's existence was publicly known. Many intermediaries were long gone, but some descendants held knowledge of the vault. They had maintained secrecy for decades, but ultimately, the truth prevailed. The vault could not remain hidden forever. The revelation serves as both justice and historical clarity. The world finally knows what happened to the missing Romanov treasures, and the legacy of the Romanovs' wealth is restored. Lessons from history. Standing in the vault, it became clear that this story is more than about gems or money. It is a human story, a testament to courage, secrecy, greed, and legacy. Courage. The Romanov daughters hid jewels in the face of death, demonstrating intelligence and bravery. Greed. Yurovsky and his cohorts sought wealth and power, committing theft under the guise of revolution. Secrecy. The vault shows the lengths humans will go to protect wealth and influence. Justice. After over a century, the treasures have been preserved and accounted for, honoring history. Resilience. History can survive even the most violent upheaval, waiting for those who pursue truth with care. It is a story that bridges past and present, connecting lives lost to lives dedicated to discovery. The final reflection. I ran my fingers over Alexandra's tiara. It sparkled as if it remembered the hands of the young Tsarina who last wore it. I thought of the sisters, the Empress, and the Tsar. The jewels were not just wealth, they were symbols of life interrupted, hope hidden, and resilience forged under unimaginable circumstances. The fact that these treasures survived is a testament to human ingenuity and the enduring power of secrecy. But their recovery is also a warning. History remembers, and justice, no matter how delayed, can arrive in the most unexpected ways. The Romanov jewels, long thought lost, are now preserved for posterity. The tiara will be displayed in a museum, its story told with reverence. The Grand Imperial Pendant will remain in a secure collection, a reminder of power, loss, and mystery. Other recovered jewels will be catalogued, some returning to Russia, others to museums worldwide, ensuring the Romanov legacy is protected. The final lesson is clear: even in the face of greed, chaos, and death, history and justice can endure. The Romanov treasures were never just gems, they were history itself. And after more than a century of mystery, they finally tell their story. Thank you for finding time to watch our videos. Kindly do us a favor and subscribe to the Famigraphic Show.